be a little bit different from others. So I will talk more about climate impacts, the impacts of climate change. So far, we saw a lot of climate actions, fantastic talks today, a wide variety, very diverse program. I want to take you one step before, where we are using a technology called Earth observation from space to look into impacts of climate change. And by impacts, I meant what we do is we use three keywords: monitoring, assessing, and evaluating the impacts of climate change, because that is very important to provide proofs of impacts of climate change to different stakeholders, including the policymakers, in simple terms, to make interventions at policy level. I believe, or our institutes like ours, we believe that we have to make interventions at policy level to bring large-scale changes and to bring positive changes to mitigate climate change impacts. Is it new? So I already told you about Earth observation from space. I used the word space and satellites. Is it something new which I'm going to introduce? No. I started working in this domain 20 years back in India in a grassroots level NGO at Bangalore. So the NGO's name was Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and Environment. I must say that we managed to bring impacts in the ground using this technology. At that time, we were looking into deforestation of different forests in India, and also contributing to the policies where there were strong debates between inclusive and exclusive approach of tribals within the forest or outside the forest. So there was a group of scientists who said that, okay, we have to move all the tribals outside the forest to protect that. And another group was against that ideology. So we managed to use satellite data to process them, to analyze them, to show the policymakers that, hey, there is proof that the tribals are actually not creating any disturbance within the forest area. It's actually the fringe villages. You know, the urbanization happening around the forest are actually ruining the forest or increasing the deforestation due to that. So after my stint in India using remote sensing, I have also moved to outside India, looking at different places in the globe, especially in African countries and Asian countries. So that is one advantage of using something, data from satellites, is that there is no boundary. You know, we can address issues, or we can collaborate internationally to address issues like climate changes, to solve some of the global issues worldwide. So I'm going to talk about a global approach to solve or to quantify some of the global challenges. Let me tell you a story. I have a friend who is based in Iran. And in the slide, you can see a lake called Urmia Lake, which was, once upon a time, the second largest saline lake in the world. The size of that lake was 5,000 square kilometers. It's still 5,000 square kilometers. So to give you a context about how huge it is, the city of Kanpur is 400 square kilometers. So it's almost larger than 10 times the city of Kanpur. And it was home to a lot of ecosystem services, a lot of migratory birds, providing livelihoods to millions of people around the lake, fishing, ecosystem services, leisure, tourism. So it was a major happening place in Iran. So my friend, who was into the tourism business, he had a small bed and breakfast setup just near the shore in the northern part of the Iran. In the late 90s, or in the beginning of the 90s, every year he had a pier going to the shore of the lake. Every year he realized that the water is retreating. So he had to, increase the length of the pier to meet the water every year again. At some point, he realized that it's not going to work out. What happened? The lake dried up. Yeah, by 1995 to 2014, the lake completely dried up to 10% of the actual size left by 2015. So imagine the kind of disaster. It's a 5,000 square kilometer lake, dried up to 10% left. And it's a saline lake. What is saline lake means? Saline lake means it's salty water. So it's left with a huge desert of salt sand, which is now creating a lot of ecological problems in and around the Urmia Lake. Now look at this. We, as scientists, we used data from satellites to quantify how that change happened. So this is one example how we were using data from satellites to also to understand how over time from 1990s the change of the lake surface was happening. And you can clearly see that in 2014 it was completely dried up. In 2018, if you look into the extreme right, you can see that some of the water is back because there was a flood in that region in those years. The reason behind the drying up of this lake is a debate in the scientific community. There are two main reasons. The first one is the overuse of water for agriculture in the upstream. So all the water from the rivers were diverted for more agriculture. So there was no water left to reach the lake. That was a main contributing factor. It's also related to globalization, increasing population, increasing demand, etc. The second factor, major factor, is climate change, of course, the warming of the lakes. So there is reported increase in temperature in these lakes, so the evaporation increased and a lot of water was lost. Which factor has contributed a lot is a matter of debate still. Yeah? There are a lot of studies happening, why and how and things. But this 2018 flood was a reviving movement there, and we hope that some of those water will stay back. Now, I want to take you a little bit more to the basics. Why are we talking so much about climate actions? Why are we worried? If you look into the Earth, 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water. Only 30% is covered by land. Then what is the issue? We have a lot of water. But there is a twist. Most of you might know. Yeah? 97% of that total water on Earth is saline water. It's in the oceans. Yeah? We cannot use that. Only 3% of the fresh water is left for these billions of population, increasing population, to do all the domestic and, most importantly, agriculture. And in that 3% of fresh water, 70% are still very difficult to tap because they lie in the glaciers and ice caps. Yeah? So only 30% or 32% of that 3% of the fresh water is available for us. And it varies in the entire globe. Huh? So there are Sahel region in Africa where the water availability is very less. But in Asia, we are fortunate with good monsoons, rainfall. It's all about management. Actually, we have more access to water. We have more water availability because we have good rainfall. Of course, it varies. Now, in that 3% of fresh water, you know what is the biggest use of fresh water? The biggest use of fresh water is to produce food. 70% of the fresh water is used for irrigation. So that is why there is so much of focus on agriculture and food security, especially in the context of climate change. We already saw there are many climate change risks. It's very contradictory, you know. When you start looking at a global stage, we can see that due to the same climate change, there are farmers facing two different kind of problems. You can see here flooded cornfields, which is again due to climate change. There are more events of floods. And on the other hand, you can see that the drought affected fields, again due to climate change. So there are prolonged droughts. So there are mainly three major climate events or climate change events: warming temperatures, changes in rainfall pattern, and we all are seeing that and also sea level rise, which contaminates water in the coastal areas as well, which is a big issue because a larger amount of the population stay in the coastal areas. It also causes migration and conflicts. Because of the recurring floods, there are a lot of migration happening, especially in our neighboring countries, Bangladesh, for example, also in Africa. Also, due to droughts, there are people moving from one country to another, walking for days to find one small pond of water for their livelihoods. So this is an example from Somalia. It is also happening in Sudan, where the shepherds walk with their livestock for days to find food for them. So there is clearly a new climate paradigm. There is a shift. You can see that what was previous climate and what is a new climate. So we can already see in general a new shift of the climate, showing temperature extremes, more floods, more droughts, as I pointed out. So what we need is climate resilient strategies, which takes into account how to adapt and mitigate. Especially in food security, we work with the farmers to tell them, okay, what are the types of interventions they need to continue cultivating in the fields and ensuring their yields. They need to adapt, they need to mitigate for a resilient future. Yeah, so population, that's another factor with climate change, right? So ever growing population, and we are expecting around 10 billion by 2050. We are now touching 8 billion people, and it's estimated that we need 70% more food by 2050. The issue is, we will somehow make it, but how sustainable that will be, or how well managed that water will be for that increased amount of food production, is the main question mark. And that is one reason, that is what happened in Urmia Lake, which you saw in Iran, because they wanted to increase the production because there was demand. But it was a mishap because the management was not good. The water management was not good. So what we need, we at our institute, we came up with this concept of more crop per drop with our collaborators, of course, internationally. And we now work towards a concept called water productivity. Water productivity is the amount of yield obtained per drop of water. So we want to increase the yield, the food, the dollars or the Indian rupees, which the farmers get out of their production per drop, or the jobs generated per drop of water. We want to increase that and decrease the amount of water. That is what is called optimal use of resources. Yeah. So we work towards this slogan of more crop per drop to ensure sustainable land and water use for food production. To ensure this, it's also important to know that which are the hotspots. What is happening around the world? How do we monitor this land and water use? So the numerator part is land use and the denominator part is water use. Yeah? We want to know how much yield is produced, how much crop is produced in the land, or how much water is being used. How do we monitor this? The area of the globe is so vast, and we have similar interests all over the world, especially focusing on Africa and Asia mainly. That is where Earth observation satellites come into play. You might know there are many satellites in the orbit, but today I'm talking about Earth observation satellites, which are launched by several space agencies, including ours, the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, NASA, European Space Agencies, Japanese space agencies. At present, there are around 1,000 Earth observation satellites in the orbit. One of the advantages of these satellites sent by our government-based space agencies is that they adapted an open data policy, especially from NASA and European Space Agency. All the data coming from their satellites sent by using public money, the data is available open. You can also log in and get the data for anywhere, for Kanpur, for all the villages around the Kanpur, and you can do a study about your land and water use productivity and see what is happening over the last 20 years. Is water is coming? How much rainfall is happening? What are the impacts? Are the agriculture is being reduced? Are farmers able to get more production? Those kind of study you can do anywhere in the globe because of this open data policy adopted by different agencies. Our own ISRO is also in the same path now. So they have also started putting a lot of data sets in the open domain, which creates a lot of opportunities for us to study about what is happening around the globe. What does Earth observation satellites do? So this is an example of a satellite. In simple words, a satellite is a vehicle around the orbit with a lot of cameras in them. What does it do? It orbits around the Earth in a fixed way. Okay, so today there is a satellite taking a picture on top of Kanpur. We know next when that satellite will come up. Maybe some satellites come in the next 5 days, some satellites come in the next 2 weeks. So every 5 days we are getting a good resolution of data for the entire globe from these satellites. So that is the beauty of this technology. So the satellites keep on taking pictures using the sensors. I don't want to get into the science of sensors and all. But this is in short happening. Yeah? So there are hundreds of satellites taking picture of the Earth every day. And it's available since 1980s. So we can easily study last 40 years what were the impacts of climate change happened in this world. And there is no boundaries. It's beyond the boundaries. It's not limited to a particular country. It can be anywhere. Another important revolutionary change which happened with the satellites is that now there are the satellites which have microwave sensors which can measure rainfall. It's kind of revolutionary because every 30 minutes there are satellites measuring rainfall in the orbit. And these rainfall estimates are highly accurate nowadays. It is becoming accurate. There were issues before, but nowadays it is becoming more and more mature. Another thing, from the satellites which we, or I as a scientist, which I'm interested in to get insights on crops. You might have heard about artificial intelligence, big data. So those kind of technologies have revolutionized the world of satellite data processing, where we can easily get crop types. We can understand the growth of the crop in each season. We can understand the crop health, how it is progressing. We can understand how much yield is going to give the crops. And we can also get an idea about how much water is being used in a single field. So field level analysis, you can see here, you can also see the fields, right? And these kind of data sets are now available for the entire world. Now, you might be asking why then this is not yet popular, because this is still maturing. I can see that I told you I started using this 20 years back. Still the importance is there, but in the last 5 years, 5 to 7 years, I've seen that these kind of approaches are becoming matured. So there is more reliability. Reliability was an issue before. That's one reason why the field level activities or interventions are really important, because if you want to validate this kind of data, we also need field level measurements, etc. So where I stand in this is between the satellites and the farmers. So I'm interested in designing tools with this data to make informed decisions, not only by the farmers, but by different stakeholders in different countries. We are doing this in different Middle Eastern countries like Egypt, Iraq, etc., to also develop their capacity on using these data using open source tools. Why? Because these data sets are free. It would be nice to have this capacity developed in our ministries. We have also done these kind of trainings in Maharashtra and Karnataka as well. So we develop simple applications which a farmer can access through mobile phone, where it gives some insights about their field. Now, this is not only strictly adhered to research area. There are now a lot of startups coming up on improved solutions for farmers using these kind of data. There is something called predictive analytics. By adding those prediction part as well, it can give a very good insight about what will be a range of yield if the crop growth and the crop health parameters are like this over a season. The beauty is that for every season, we can get these kind of snapshots. And these data sets are near real time. That means for last week, the data is already available. Of course, one of the criticism we always, within our institute itself, because we also deal with water governance, we always get um, from our fellow colleagues is that we are too much focused on technology. The technology readiness is a factor. How much are these farmers ready to use the technology? Maybe at the ministry level, we can still, still influence them more to use this technology to get a snapshot of at country level or a basin level. So that is why we also focus a lot on how to take these data sets to the margins, to the marginalized group. So that is one set of research happening in this world or in this field, is how to convert this complex data into something very simple. Hey, what are your field tomorrow? That's it. That is what farmer need. They don't need to see this complicated graphs and all. And that is one, I have to say that is one part of which we are still challenging part we have. And how much technology is needed. Sometimes we will not need this technology, or this kind of technology won't work everywhere, as such. So even though I said a global solution for global challenges, the fine tuning of the end product has to be developed based on end user, where he or she belongs. Capacity development, of course, that is what we have to do a lot at different levels, from the ministry level to the academics, to the students, to the future generations. We need to really spread about this kind of technology, which can be really useful for our future. And as I said, the democratization of the data. Of course, I said the satellite data is democratized. A lot of those data sets are openly available. That is why we have this opportunity to use it. But why we are relying on satellite data? Because there is no on-field measurements available. Yeah, if you want to quantify something at some level, to intervene at a policy level and all, we need measurements from ground, and that's simply not available. And if it is available, it's not open. So we need to change those kind of aspects at policy level. We need to make those data sets. There are good data available from the field collected by different agencies in India and elsewhere. They should make that open for everyone to benefit from that kind of tools. Till then, we also have the satellite data, which is open and freely available to make use of it. So that is what I want to tell you. So this is a mix of both challenges and opportunity. Opportunity, as I said, it's a maturing field. There's a lot happening in this field, especially related to climate change and food security. Yeah, the final word is you can have data without information, but if you want to get some information or do informed decisions, it's important to have some data sets. That's it. Thank you.